Regret is one of the most universal human emotions. Every choice we make closes the door to 1,000 others, and sometimes the weight of those choices becomes unbearable. Philosophers, psychologists, and poets alike have grappled with the question of whether regret is a curse or a blessing. Does it merely paralyze us, or does it teach us lessons no success could ever provide? Regret emerges when we realize our actions fell short of our values, or when life's outcomes diverged from our hopes. But beyond the initial pain, regret carries within it the seed of transformation. It demands that we confront our past with honesty and humility. To forgive ourselves, we must first acknowledge what we have done, or failed to do. Yet this is easier said than done. Some people remain haunted for decades, unable to free themselves from the shadows of regret. Others find ways to use it as a catalyst for change. Self-forgiveness sits at the heart of this journey. But what does it mean to forgive ourselves? Is it about excusing wrongdoing, or about reconciling our actions with the imperfect nature of being human? In this episode, we explore regret as both a burden and a potential teacher. We will draw on philosophy, religion, and literature to illuminate this struggle. And we will ask, can regret in fact be transformed into wisdom? Sometimes it is in the very moments we feel most broken that we uncover our deepest capacity for compassion. Regret can strip us of illusions, forcing us to face life with greater authenticity. It can also connect us with others, since we all know what it means to wish for a second chance. This opening is not the end of the story. It is the beginning of a profound inquiry into how regret might guide us toward self-forgiveness. Regret is unique among emotions because it requires memory and moral awareness. Unlike sadness, which often arises from external loss, regret is the pain of looking inward at choices we ourselves have made. It is tied to the human ability to imagine alternatives, the what-ifs and if-onlys that haunt our minds. Psychologists describe regret as counterfactual thinking, the endless comparison between what happened and what could have been. In literature, we see this theme emerge constantly. Shakespeare's Macbeth, for instance, is plagued not only by guilt, but by the irreversible regret of choices that destroyed his soul. Regret often makes us feel trapped in the past, yet its very existence shows that we hold ourselves accountable. Without regret, moral growth would be impossible. Still, regret is double-edged. It can humble us, but it can also crush us under its weight. It invites reflection, but it can also invite obsession. Understanding its dual nature is essential for moving forward. We see regret woven into cultural myths and religious stories as well, where heroes fall and must reckon with their mistakes. Ancient Greek tragedies often depict characters whose downfall stems from choices they cannot undo, leaving audiences to wrestle with regret alongside them. Regret, then, is not only personal but also collective. It reflects the shared recognition of human frailty. The more we explore it, the more we see that regret links memory with morality, shaping who we become. It is both a scar and a map, marking where we have been and where we might go. Philosophers have long debated regret's role in human life. For Søren Kierkegaard, regret was inevitable. He wrote that whether we choose or fail to choose, we will regret it either way. This paradox reflects the complexity of freedom itself. Friedrich Nietzsche, by contrast, challenged us with the concept of eternal recurrence, the idea of living life over and over again, exactly the same. To embrace this, Nietzsche argued, we must learn to affirm even our regrets. Aristotle, on the other hand, saw regret as connected to virtue and moral responsibility. For him, regret indicated that we were capable of moral growth, aware of our shortcomings, and ready to improve. These perspectives reveal tension. Is regret to be endured, transformed, or transcended? Philosophical reflection does not erase regret, but it reframes it as an inevitable part of the human condition. By engaging with these thinkers, we begin to see regret less as a personal flaw and more as a universal experience tied to human freedom. Each of these philosophers asks us to look at regret from a different angle, highlighting its paradoxes. Kierkegaard emphasizes inevitability, Nietzsche demands transformation, and Aristotle points us toward growth. Taken together, their insights remind us that regret is not something we can avoid. It is something we must learn to live with wisely. These ideas echo into modern debates about responsibility, choice, and personal meaning. The more we reflect on them, the clearer it becomes that regret is not simply about the past. It is about how we choose to live in the present. Modern psychology has explored regret extensively. Studies show that people regret inaction more than action over the long term. This means the opportunities we fail to pursue weigh heavier than the mistakes we make when we try. Neuroscience shows regret activates areas of the brain tied to decision-making, learning, and emotional memory. Regret, then, is not only emotional, but also cognitive. It reshapes the way we think and behave in the future. For some, regret becomes a powerful motivator, encouraging them to take new risks or repair damaged relationships. For others, regret becomes debilitating, leading to rumination, anxiety, or depression. The challenge lies in how we process regret. Do we let it define us, or do we use it as fuel for growth? In therapy, practices like cognitive reframing and self-compassion exercises are often used to help individuals move beyond destructive regret. Psychology thus bridges philosophy's abstract insights with practical strategies for healing. It shows us that regret can either carve out a space for resilience or deepen our wounds. Researchers also note that regret often comes in waves, surfacing at different life stages as priorities shift. What seemed insignificant at 20 may become heavy at 50. This suggests that regret is not fixed, but evolves with our perspective. By studying its patterns, psychology reveals that regret is not only about what happened, but about how we narrate our life story. The choice, then, is whether we allow regret to dominate that story or become one chapter in a larger tale of growth. Regret is often inseparable from morality. We feel regret not just because something went wrong, but because we believe we could have done better. It reflects the gap between our ideals and our actions, between the people we want to be and the people we sometimes are. Moral regret reminds us of our responsibility toward others and toward ourselves. It keeps us accountable, demanding that we take our values seriously. In many religious traditions, regret is even seen as the first step toward repentance or renewal. For example, in Christianity, confession and penance are rooted in the acknowledgement of wrongdoing and the desire to change. In Buddhism, regret is part of right intention, recognizing harm and cultivating compassion to prevent it in the future. In Islam, tawbah, or repentance, emphasizes turning back to God with sincerity after mistakes. These traditions show us that regret can be transformative, not just painful. But moral regret can also lead to shame and self-condemnation, trapping us in cycles of guilt. The challenge lies in striking a balance, acknowledging mistakes without being defined by them. Philosophers like Immanuel Kant emphasized that moral worth lies in striving toward duty, even if we fall short. Regret, then, signals that our conscience is alive. It hurts, but it also affirms that we care deeply about living a good life. To forgive ourselves, we must accept both our limits and our capacity for growth. Regret becomes the bridge between error and renewal, guiding us toward alignment with our values. Literature has long been a mirror for regret. Shakespeare's Macbeth shows us how regret corrodes the soul when unchecked by forgiveness. His desperate attempts to cling to power only deepen his torment, illustrating how regret, mixed with guilt, can become unbearable. Dostoevsky's Raskolnikov, in Crime and Punishment, embodies a different kind of regret, the slow recognition of moral responsibility after rationalizing a terrible crime. His eventual redemption comes through confronting his regret honestly. Mary Shelley's Frankenstein also offers a powerful image. Victor Frankenstein is haunted by regret not only for creating the monster, but for failing to take responsibility for his actions. These stories resonate because they capture the universality of regret. We see ourselves reflected in their struggles. Literature reveals regret as both destructive and redemptive. It can destroy those who deny it, but it can also awaken those who face it. Beyond fiction, poets often write about regret as well. In T.S. Eliot's The Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock, the speaker laments missed opportunities, illustrating how regret can stem not only from wrongdoing but from inaction and hesitation. These works remind us that regret is not just an internal emotion, but a narrative force that shapes human lives. When we read about characters weighed down by regret, we learn to confront our own. Literature turns private suffering into shared insight, showing that regret links us across cultures and generations. Through stories, we see that regret, though painful, can illuminate the path toward change. Regret does not only affect our emotions, it shapes our very identity. Who we believe ourselves to be is deeply influenced by the regrets we carry. A single decision can alter how we tell the story of our lives. Psychologists call this narrative identity, the ongoing story we create to make sense of our experiences. Regret can become a chapter in that story, sometimes overshadowing all others. But it can also serve as a turning point where we learn, grow, and redefine ourselves. Self-identity is fragile because it is built on memory, and memory is selective. Often we remember our mistakes more vividly than our successes. Regret then becomes like a stain, coloring how we see ourselves. But the truth is, identity is fluid. We are not frozen in the past. We are constantly reshaping ourselves through choices in the present. Philosophers like Paul Ricoeur emphasized the role of narrative in ethics, suggesting that by reinterpreting our past, we can reframe our identity in healthier ways. Regret, therefore, is not only about what we did, but about how we choose to interpret it now. By integrating regret into our story with honesty and compassion, we prevent it from controlling us. Self-forgiveness becomes possible when we recognize that our worth is not defined solely by our mistakes. Instead, regret becomes a teacher, urging us toward authenticity. Our life stories will always contain chapters of regret, but they do not have to be the final word. We can rewrite the meaning of those chapters, transforming them into moments of growth. Many of our deepest regrets are tied to relationships. We regret words spoken in anger, opportunities to reconcile left unused, or love withheld when it mattered most. These regrets are powerful because they involve not only ourselves, but the bonds we share with others. Regret in relationships often brings the sharpest pain because it intertwines with love, trust, and vulnerability. When someone is gone, through distance, estrangement, or even death, the chance to repair those bonds may feel lost forever. Yet even then, regret teaches us about what we value most. It reminds us that relationships are fragile and require care. Psychologists note that people often regret not spending enough time with loved ones far more than material pursuits. This suggests that regret serves as a compass, pointing us back to connection. In literature and film, we see countless depictions of characters who wish they had said, "I love you," forgiven sooner, or simply been more present. Religious traditions also highlight this truth. In Judaism, the High Holy Days emphasize seeking forgiveness from others before seeking forgiveness from God, showing the centrality of relationships in moral life. In Buddhism, compassion toward others is seen as inseparable from compassion toward oneself. These traditions reflect the deep wisdom that regret in relationships, while painful, can awaken us to the importance of love. By acknowledging these regrets, we can learn to nurture the connections we still have. Regret can fracture relationships, but it can also inspire us to repair and cherish them. In this way, regret becomes not only sorrow, but also a call to love more deeply. While regret can guide growth, it can also trap us in cycles of rumination. Rumination is the act of replaying events over and over, reliving the pain without finding resolution. Psychologists warn that this habit can lead to anxiety, depression, and even a distorted sense of self. Instead of learning from regret, we become stuck in its shadows. Regret then transforms into self-punishment, feeding on itself endlessly. This is one reason why regret can feel so heavy. It convinces us that the past defines us forever. The Greek philosopher Epictetus warned that we should not chain ourselves to what we cannot control, but instead focus on what lies within our power now. Similarly, Buddhist teachings encourage mindfulness as an antidote to rumination, observing thoughts without attachment so that regret loses its grip. Science also supports this view. Studies show that people who practice mindfulness experience less intrusive regret and greater emotional resilience. Literature often depicts characters consumed by rumination, unable to move forward because they dwell on what cannot be changed. This suggests a universal danger. Regret can either be a teacher or a jailer. The difference lies in whether we use it to grow or let it trap us in an endless loop. Rumination is seductive because it feels like we're doing something, but in truth, it often blocks healing. To forgive ourselves, we must learn when to release regret rather than replay it. Otherwise, regret remains an open wound instead of becoming a scar we can live with. Healing begins when we recognize that we are not the sum of our mistakes. Despite its pain, regret can be one of life's most powerful teachers. When we look back honestly, regret shows us where our values truly lie. It can guide us to make better choices in the future, not out of fear, but out of wisdom. Psychologists have found that people often learn more from regrets than from successes because mistakes make us pause and reflect deeply. This is why regret, though painful, can be transformative. In philosophy, Aristotle described virtue as the result of practice and learning from error. Regret is the emotional signpost pointing us toward virtue. In Japanese culture, the art of kintsugi, mending broken pottery with gold, offers a beautiful metaphor. Our regrets are the cracks, but growth turns them into something even more precious. Literature echoes this truth as well. In Charles Dickens' Great Expectations, Pip's regrets about ambition and betrayal eventually lead him to greater humility and compassion. Religious traditions also frame regret as a doorway to growth. In Christianity, regret leads to repentance and redemption. In Hinduism, it connects to karma, where lessons learned in this life shape future actions. Science, too, supports the idea that regret can sharpen decision-making by encouraging reflection on what really matters. The challenge lies in embracing regret without drowning in it, seeing it as a guide rather than a life sentence. Regret can show us who we don't want to be, and in turn clarify who we can become. Self-forgiveness grows from this perspective, turning pain into wisdom. Regret is the shadow that reveals where the light of growth is waiting. The act of forgiving ourselves may be one of the hardest human challenges. Unlike forgiving others, we cannot distance ourselves from our own mistakes. We carry them everywhere. Self-forgiveness requires honesty, compassion, and courage. Honesty means acknowledging what we did without excuses. Compassion means recognizing that we, like all humans, are imperfect and capable of error. Courage means choosing to move forward rather than staying frozen in shame. Psychologists describe self-forgiveness as a process with 3 steps: accepting responsibility, repairing what can be repaired, and releasing the weight of self-condemnation. Religious traditions echo this wisdom. In Christianity, grace teaches that we are forgiven not because we deserve it, but because forgiveness restores life. In Buddhism, self-compassion is seen as inseparable from compassion for others. Without it, we cannot love fully. In Jewish thought, Teshuvah emphasizes return and renewal, teaching that even deep mistakes can be redeemed through sincere effort. Philosophers like Friedrich Nietzsche also stressed the importance of self-overcoming, learning not only to accept our flaws but to transform them into sources of strength. Literature reflects these struggles too. In Victor Hugo's Les Misérables, Jean Valjean finds redemption only when he learns to forgive himself for his past and embrace a new life. Self-forgiveness does not mean forgetting or excusing harm. It means refusing to let mistakes define us forever. It is about integrating regret into our story without letting it destroy the whole book. By forgiving ourselves, we acknowledge our humanity and open the possibility of renewal. Self-forgiveness is not a gift we earn. It is a gift we give to ourselves so that we may live fully again. Regret not only affects our inner lives but can expand our compassion for others. When we have faced our own mistakes, we become more patient with the flaws of those around us. Regret teaches humility, reminding us that we are not above error, and this recognition allows us to meet others with understanding. Philosophers like Martha Nussbaum emphasize that emotions such as regret have moral value because they cultivate empathy and solidarity. Through regret, we learn what it feels like to harm, to disappoint, and to wish for another chance. This awareness makes us gentler with others who struggle. Religious traditions affirm this connection. In Christianity, forgiveness of self and others is intertwined, reflecting the belief that compassion flows outward from inward healing. In Buddhism, the recognition of suffering, our own and others, is the foundation of compassion. In Islam, mercy is one of God's central attributes, and believers are encouraged to embody mercy in their relationships, especially when others falter. Literature often portrays this transformation. In Steinbeck's The Grapes of Wrath, hardship and regret shape characters into people of profound compassion for one another. Psychology also supports this. Studies reveal that people who have worked through regret often show higher levels of empathy and generosity. Regret, then, is not only about personal pain, but about creating a bridge between ourselves and others. By recognizing our own fragility, we open our hearts to the fragility of those around us. Regret becomes a universal teacher, reminding us that every human carries wounds and longings for redemption. In this way, regret, far from isolating us, can become the foundation of deep human connection. True healing from regret requires accountability. Without it, forgiveness risks becoming shallow or self-deceptive. Accountability means acknowledging the harm we caused and seeking, when possible, to repair it. This process may include apologizing, making restitution, or simply changing our behavior in meaningful ways. Psychologists note that genuine accountability often reduces feelings of lingering guilt because we can see concrete proof that we are trying to set things right. Philosophers like Immanuel Kant stressed that moral responsibility requires us to act according to principles we would want applied universally, even after failure. Religious traditions echo this truth. Judaism emphasizes teshuvah, a process of repentance and repair. Christianity teaches confession and penance. Hinduism frames responsibility within the cycle of karma, where actions ripple through time. Literature often portrays redemption through accountability. Consider Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment, where Raskolnikov cannot find peace until he confronts his crime and accepts its consequences. Accountability transforms regret from a passive burden into an active pathway toward growth. It reminds us that while we cannot undo the past, we can shape the future. Renewal does not erase mistakes. It integrates them into a larger story of responsibility and transformation. Self-forgiveness is not selfish. It is the soil in which moral accountability and compassion for others take root. The challenge of regret lies in finding balance. Too little forgiveness can trap us in endless shame, while too much can slip into denial or excuse-making. Balance means recognizing our responsibility while also extending compassion to ourselves. Psychologists describe this as a healthy self-forgiveness process, where we accept responsibility without collapsing into self-hatred. Philosophers like Søren Kierkegaard wrote about despair as the refusal to accept the self as both finite and flawed, suggesting that real healing requires balance. Religious traditions offer guidance here. In Buddhism, the middle way emphasizes avoiding extremes, neither indulgence nor denial. In Christianity, forgiveness is inseparable from repentance, ensuring that compassion does not excuse harmful behavior. In Islam, the concept of tawbah, repentance, teaches that God's mercy is abundant but paired with accountability. Literature also illustrates this truth. In Shakespeare's Macbeth, the absence of balance between guilt and denial leads to madness and ruin. By contrast, characters who achieve balance find peace and moral clarity. Modern science supports this too. Research shows that balanced self-forgiveness correlates with healthier relationships, stronger resilience, and lower stress. The balance between compassion and responsibility keeps us human, capable of learning, capable of healing, but never blind to the real consequences of our actions. Regret then becomes not a prison, but a compass. To continue exploring regret and self-forgiveness, I want to share a selection of books, podcasts, and websites that offer profound insights into this subject. First, The Art of Forgiveness, Loving Kindness, and Peace by Jack Kornfield brings together timeless Buddhist wisdom with practices that open the heart to healing and compassion. In contrast, Self-Compassion by Kristin Neff introduces groundbreaking psychological research that proves being kind to ourselves is not indulgent, but essential for growth. Moving into philosophy, Paul Tillich's The Courage to Be is a deep and challenging work that examines how guilt and despair can be transformed through courage, faith, and renewal. Daniel Gilbert's Stumbling on Happiness provides a lighter but equally illuminating psychological perspective, showing us how our minds misinterpret regret, happiness, and the future we imagine. Colin Tipping's Radical Forgiveness offers a bold spiritual reframe, encouraging us to see regret not as failure, but as an opportunity for transformation and higher awareness. For listeners who prefer spoken insights, there are several excellent podcasts. The Happiness Lab with Dr. Laurie Santos presents cutting-edge psychological research on happiness, regret, and emotional resilience in a practical way. On Being with Krista Tippett offers conversations with thinkers, poets, scientists, and spiritual leaders who wrestle with forgiveness, meaning, and the complexity of being human. Hidden Brain by Shankar Vedantam dives into the unconscious patterns that shape regret and self-forgiveness, blending science and storytelling beautifully. Finally, for ongoing study and daily practice, 3 websites stand out. The Greater Good Science Center at Berkeley provides articles and research-backed tools on forgiveness, compassion, and well-being. Mindful.org offers practical exercises for cultivating presence, acceptance, and release from rumination. And the Stanford Forgiveness Project, one of the leading academic initiatives in this field, shares proven techniques and courses that guide individuals through the practice of forgiveness step by step. Together, these books, podcasts, and websites form a toolkit for anyone seeking to transform the burden of regret into wisdom and renewal. As we reach the end of this journey, we return to the central question: can we forgive ourselves? Regret is heavy because it binds us to the past, yet within its weight lies the possibility of transformation. Regret teaches us where we fell short, and it guides us toward compassion and wisdom. Philosophers remind us that self-knowledge begins with acknowledging our errors. Religious traditions remind us that mercy and redemption are always possible. Psychology shows us that self-forgiveness leads to better health, stronger relationships, and resilience. Literature tells us stories of characters who are redeemed, reminding us that our own stories can also turn toward renewal. Self-forgiveness is not the erasure of mistakes, but their integration into a larger narrative of growth. Accountability ensures we do not excuse ourselves, while compassion ensures we do not destroy ourselves. Balance is the key. When we embrace regret as a teacher, we step into the freedom to live more fully. Forgiveness, both for ourselves and for others, is the path forward, the bridge between the brokenness of the past and the possibility of a better future. May we each find the courage to carry regret as wisdom, not as a chain.